Okay, I'm going to do a couple examples from the worksheet. I'm testing this out, so we'll see how it goes. If you hear something in the background, Lucy is snoring right now, so it's not me, it's her. Okay, so the ones that you should be able to do right away are, of course, letter E, because it is undefined, because we do know that be patient with me. Okay. We do know that a vertical line is undefined. And then we also know that a horizontal line has a zero slope. So with the other ones, I'm going to do the first one. You always want to find a point that is going right through like a perfect intersection. So like for instance, I would use this one. And then I'm going to use this one here because those both have like a perfect intersection. So then remember that I'm always going to go the rise over the run because that gives us the slope. And then I'm going to count how many I go up or down. And so I'm going up 1, 2, so that goes on top. And I'm going across 1, 2, so that goes on bottom. That's the run. And 2 divided by 2 is 1. I'm going up so it's positive, and I'm going to the right towards the positives because these are the positives. So they're both positive, so the slope is positive. We also know that if you were walking, remember we always read a graph from left to right. And if you were walking, you have to walk uphill, and so that's positive. So if we keep that same idea here, and you were walking from left to right, you would be sliding down. Dan would be skateboarding down the hill. Okay, so we already know, just from what we know about slopes, that this is going to be negative. And then I'm going to choose 2 points that are perfectly at an intersection. So I'm going to choose this one, and then I'm going to choose this one. I could have also chose this one or this one, okay? And then I'm going to do my rise over my run. So my rise is going down 1. That's where the negative comes from. And then my run is going across 2. And so it's negative 1/2. Okay. This one is going to be a positive slope because you're going to go up. This one's going to be a negative slope. This one is going to be a negative slope. This one's going to be a positive. But I'm going to let you work on those ones on your own. Okay. So then that's finding slope from a graph. If we have 2 points, we don't have a graph, we can use the slope formula. So the slope formula, remember, is the same thing. It is the change in y over the change in x, but this time I have to use my points. So I need to label them, x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I have to think about what goes on top, which is the rise, and the rise goes up and down, so that's on the y-axis. So this is y1, and the change means we subtract, so we can find the difference. And on the bottom, x1 minus x2. You also have this formula in your notes, okay? So then once I have them labeled, then I can just start filling in my formula. So y1 is right here, and it's 5 minus, and then y2 is 12. And then on the bottom, and I think on your foldable you guys have parentheses, so it tells you to put it in parentheses. On the bottom, you're going to go x1, which is the same thing as 1, minus 3. Okay, so now we're ready to subtract. If you notice that when we're subtracting like 5 minus 12 and 1 minus 3, we don't have enough to take away, so we have to add the opposite. So I'm going to add the opposite. I'm going to do that for both right now. Okay. And then on the top, the signs are different, so I'm going to subtract, and I get 7, and I have more negatives, so it's negative. And then on the bottom, the signs are different. I'm going to subtract, and I get 2, and I have more negatives, so it's negative. So this slope is 7 over 2. It becomes positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so it becomes positive. Okay. I am also going to do one that has a lot of negatives, so I'm going to do letter H. So letter H is going to be the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label this. And remember, if I'm going too fast for you, you just pause the video while you do this, and then you can come back to it. And then I'm going to use the same formula. M is equal to y1, y2. Remember, y always goes on top because we're talking about the rise, and that's the y-axis. And then the run, x1 minus x2. And then I just start filling it in. Okay, so y1 is -1 minus, I have to put the minus there, y2 is 11. So that's the top. On the bottom, I'm going to fill in my x's. x1 is -2 minus, and then x2 is -8. Now notice that I put minus and the -8. So I can't just like say the minus is the negative. The minus is part of the formula, so I have to write it down, and then x2 is -8. So now I'm going to go through and do my add the opposite. So I'm going to add the opposite. I'm going to add the opposite. And then I'm ready to go ahead and add. So on the top, the signs are the same. So I'm going to add them, and I get -12 because they're both negative. On the bottom, I have -2 plus +8. And those are, signs are different. So I go ahead and I subtract, and I get +6. Okay. So normally we can leave like a fraction, a slope as a fraction, but on this one, I can actually simplify it because -12 divided by 6 would give me -2. So the slope of this line is -2. Or I could also write it like m is equal to -2/1, because remember, I always need a run. We talked about that. And so it's always over 1. Okay, I am not going to do the examples before because they're very similar to the ones that are in the previous homework. So I'm just going to go over the table because that's what's new on this page. So I'm going to look at the let's try one that says find the slope of the line that passes through the points in the table below. And so remember that we have we always start with the slope, which is the change in y. Can you hear Lucy? She's snoring. Over the change in x. Okay. So I want to see what's going on with the y first and how it's changing. So how am I getting from 7 to -9? And how am I getting from -9 to -11? So -7 to -9, it's actually getting smaller because remember, as we go further on the number line, -7 to -9 to -11, we're getting further away from 0. So it's actually getting smaller. So since it's getting smaller, I'm decreasing. So I know it's going to be a negative. And it's decreasing by 2 because the difference between -7 and -9 is 2. And the same thing, -9 and -11 is 2. So the change in y on the top is -2. So now I have my rise, or my change in y, and I just need my change in x. So I'm going to go to the other side of the table, and I'm going to see how it's changing. Well, over on this side, it's also decreasing, so I know it's going to be negative because it's going from 8 to 6 to 4, and the numbers are getting smaller. So they're decreasing, and from 8 to 6 is the difference is 2, and then from 6 to 4 the difference is 2. So the change in x is also -2. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So the slope of this line is 1. Okay. On the next page, I think you can do 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers of what you should get. So for number 1, you should get -1/2. For number 2, you should end up getting an undefined slope. There's a section in your notes that we took right before we left where we wrote out the difference between getting an undefined and a 0 slope. There's notes on how you cannot divide by 0. Think about the examples that I gave you. Number 3, you should get 0. You also have that in your notes, like what it looks like to get a 0 slope. Okay. What is the slope of h over x? This is the same thing as just saying what is the slope of the line. So this h over x can just also be what is the slope of the line. And you're going to find 2 points. And if you notice, there's already 2 points right there. So really what all you have to do is count the rise over the run and then think about it. That's going to be a negative. Okay. The same thing with number 5. Okay, that one's going to be a positive. So let's look at the table. And that's just like the example. You are looking for the change in y. Okay, so the change in y. You can use a triangle to abbreviate change in y. So you can go like this. And in math, that little triangle stands for change. So if you want to make this a think bubble, you can. That refers to change. So you're looking for how y is changing and how x is changing. Y is changing. It's going from 10 to 8 to 6. So you should start thinking it's decreasing. So it's going to be negative. And it's going down by 2. So -2 over whatever, how the x is changing. And what I notice is that the x is also, no, it's not also decreasing. It's actually getting bigger because you're going from a negative to a positive number. So this is going to be positive. And because negative to 1, that's positive. So that's increasing. And then from 1 to 7, that's increasing. So it's increasing by 6. -5 plus 6 would give me 1. And then 1 plus 6 would give me 7. So on the bottom, it's 7. I can simplify this because I can divide the top and the bottom by 2. So I get -1 over 3. And if you want to make a think bubble and put divide by 2, you can. Okay. Let's see. The next one, I think you can figure out the table for this one. You should be okay with this one. The answer is going to be 8 over 5. Okay. And then this one, it says, go ahead and look at the table with the change in y over the change in x. So it says 2 things. The table below contains points that lie in a line. Fill in the missing table values. So first we have to figure out what are the missing values. Well, if I can find the pattern, then I can figure out the values. So if I can look at the pattern here, then I can figure out what comes next. So from 5 to 2, that's decreasing. So this is decreasing by 3. And then to get from 2 to -1, I'm decreasing by 3 again, because 2 minus 3 is -1. Okay, and so I can now skip to -10. And when I skip to -10, I need to get here, I need to go -3. Okay, so I'm going to show you up on top. This is -10 minus 3. So I need to add the opposite. And then I have -10 plus -3. And that's -13. Okay, so now I have all my x values. So now I have to see what the pattern is on the bottom so that I can figure out what goes in those missing places. So I'm going to start with what I have. So to get from 4 to 8, I notice that I am increasing by 4. Okay. And then I can now figure out this must be 0, because to get to 0 to 4, I'm increasing by 4. And then to get from 8 to 4 to here, I'm increasing by another, oh, for this one, okay, 4 to 8. Okay, so I was saying for this one, if I increase this one by another 4, then the number here would be 12. And then to get from 12 to 4 would be 16 and 20. So something different is happening. They're skipping here, just like they skipped on top. So let's go back to the top. And up on the top, to get from -1 to -7, it's not -3. It's actually, they're doubling it. They're going -6. So because -1 minus 6 would give me -7. So it's like they're skipping things in the table. So down here, they're skipping in the table. They're going to go +8. Because up here, they went -6. Down here, they're also going to skip. So this is going to be 16. And then my table now makes sense, because to get to 16 to 20, it's +4. Okay, so I know that's a little confusing because we haven't done a table that skips before, but it's just like they're skipping just to save space. And then if you notice, the same thing happens at the end. So up on the top, to get from -13 to -19, they're skipping again. They're going -6. So like they're doubling the -3. They're doing 2 -3s. So on the bottom, they're doing the same thing. They're going +8. Okay. So now we have everything filled out in the table, okay? And so part B says, find the slope of the line that passes through the points, okay? Well, I can now just look at whatever pattern that I have. So I can go M equals the change in Y over the change in X. So on the top, Y is changing by, on the top over here, which is on the bottom of the table, Y is changing by 4. It's increasing by a +4. Even though I have 8 here, remember they're skipping parts in the table. It's still increasing by 4. And then on the bottom, which is the X, which is right here, it is decreasing by 3. Even though I have this 6 here, they're just doubling it. They're just skipping parts in the table, but I'm still going -3. So the slope of this line is 4/3, and I can have the negative here. Remember we talked about, I think right before we left on that Friday or that Thursday, we talked about how if we want to represent the slope and it has to be negative, that you could write it like this, or you could write it like this, or you could write it like this, so that the negative can either belong to the whole thing by putting it in the front, or it can belong to the top, or it can belong to the bottom, but it cannot belong to both, because once it belongs to both, then it becomes positive by that rule of a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, I hope this helped you. I will talk to you soon. I miss you all. Bye.